Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the video. Let's discuss frame rate and resolution, but from a very different perspective from normal. The community manager over at TripWire Interactive, they are responsible for Killing Floor 2 on the PS4, recently provided a Q&A session over at the PlayStation Experience. And he'd said that they don't know what the frame rate and resolution is going to be quite yet. They're not 100% locked it down, but it won't be 30 FPS most likely. It's going to be 60 FPS, and their goal is 1080p. And basically they said that, you know, we're going to see where we manage to get to and then keep the community informed, which I think is fair. I think it's a very fair answer. You know, he's not making promises, but that's what their target is. Fine. So if they manage to only get 900p and 60, he didn't lie, they're honest. Great. However, what I think the interesting part of this is, actually comes from the art director of the game, David Hensley. He added a little touch, a little punch in the ribs, if you will, to a lot of the AAA developers out there and said, yeah, we're fans of 60 FPS and we don't think that lower frame rate looks or feels more cinematic. And this comes after, of course, so much rubbish from so many different developers of, you know what, 30 FPS, that's the way to go. The game feels a lot better at 30 FPS, and you know what, we're going to add these huge ass borders as well because, well, you know, that looks much better film-like, and, you know, we might as well make the game black and white as well, right? You know, give it that real film noir style. We'll remove the sounds that can feel like a Charlie Chaplin movie, and every 5 seconds there can be a black screen that tells us of subtitles that are happening on screen and so forth. My point being, in other words, that developers are kind of taking the piss with with the excuses they give us. Now, don't get me wrong, some games, it's obvious that they have to make a decision. 30 FPS, 1080p, or 900p and 60 FPS, or whatever they have to do with the game. But what annoys me as a gamer, and I'm pretty sure many of you would agree, isn't the target, isn't what they managed to get, you know, out of the hardware. And this is what I was saying in the Dying Light video. You know, Dying Light, it's like, it looks visually very impressive, right? You can't look at that game and say, okay, it doesn't look good. You can say that it doesn't meet your personal aesthetical choices. Maybe you prefer something that looks more like kind of cartoony. Maybe, say, Sunset Overdrive's more your thing, and, you know, you prefer more bright and colourful. But even so, if you look at the shadows, you look at the character level of detail, you look at the textures, you look at the high quality polygonal modelling, you look at the amount of objects that are on screen, and so on and so forth, you can't tell me that it doesn't look visually impressive. It has a high amount of visual fidelity, and it's the same thing of the Order 1886 as well. I would agree that it looks very visually impressive. However, I would also point out to the developers that when they say, and I'm not aiming this at Techland, by the way, I'm not aiming this at Dying Light necessarily, but when they do say things, and Ready at Dawn are very much guilty of this, when they say stuff like, well, we're aiming at 30 FPS because it feels more cinematic, or it looks more cinematic, and, you know, we're adding these huge ass borders as well, that kind of crap pisses me off. Because it's lying to you. And obviously frame rate isn't necessarily always as vital in all genres. So, for example, if you're playing Assassin's Creed, higher frame rate does feel better. This is objective. This is not subjective. It feels and plays better. It looks better with a higher frame rate. There's a reason that YouTube is now supporting 60 FPS, for example, because it just looks better on screen for games, but more to the point, it feels better as well. And what frustrates me is when you get developers who tell us, well, 30 FPS is the way forward, and, you know, that's what feels much better. Yet, if you look at the very same developer or publisher in some cases, when they're addressing the PC community, you'll notice, of course, the game supports 60 FPS or 144 Hz. Why wouldn't it support that? Of course it will. Don't worry about it. Oh, hey, PC, but hey, console owners, don't worry. The game is supposed to play at 30 FPS, honestly. That kind of stuff really frustrates me. In some ways, I don't envy the decisions that developers have to make. Because at the end of the day, they're going to get judged one way or another. If they get the game running at 1080p, 30 FPS, for example, and once again, I'm picking on Assassin's Creed, but you could also use Watch Dogs and dozens of other different titles, I would say, hey, you know what? That's the best they can get out of the hardware, and in a game like that, frame rate isn't as important, you know, so, okay, it's arguable to have the visual fidelity. What I'd personally prefer, is to have an option in-game. So, in other words, there's an option which changes the internal rendered resolution. Obviously, this is not always possible because there might be different constraints inside the game. It could be, say, draw calls, issues from the CPU, in which case the resolution isn't going to make the difference. It's more the actual CPU that can't make up the gap, if you will. But let's just assume that on some games they could do it. There'd be a switch and it would change the game from 900p internal resolution to 1080p. So in other words, the frame rate or the resolution would change depending on the setting. And if you decided to have 1080p, then obviously it would be at 30 FPS. But obviously the problem with that is then you have issues with online. But for single player games, it would be kind of a cool switch. As I've mentioned before, one of the reasons that we do these graphical analysis and more specifically frame rate type of issues is it's just very interesting to see what, and how the games stack up against each other, particularly when you have some anomalies like Assassin's Creed Unity, which still just boggles my mind that they released the game in the state that it was. Sure, the PS4 version did have a frame rate disadvantage to the Xbox One, but even so, even if you take the best case of the Xbox One, it still shouldn't be mid 25 frames per second and dipping down to low 20 frames per second in many instances. It just shouldn't do that, regardless of this whole cinematic thing. But anyway, I am pretty happy with these comments from the developers behind Killing Floor 2, also known finally once again as TripWire Interactive. I think it's quite refreshing, just give us the honest answers, tell us what the score is, and then done. Now obviously there are some reasons behind this which kind of go behind the scenes, including parity, where you get, one console manufacturer who isn't so happy if the game's running at 1080p on one platform and 900 on another, because obviously in those cases it makes them look worse, and we do have some instances possibly of pressure from console developers, but I personally think that they should still just be honest about it. Just tell us what it is. At the end of the day, I think most people who are buying systems now, let's just be totally honest, if you're buying the Xbox One, you're buying the PS4, you accept that they have limitations. It's the same as the PS3, the same as the PS2. Anyway guys, let me know what you think about this one, but anyway, I'm going to get going. I'm actually feeling a bit more human now, which is really good. This bloody flu has really not wanted to leave me alone. But hopefully I should be able to finish off all the stuff that I've been promising on, basically giving myself today to chill out, and then back to normal. I'm going to try and finish off, finish off whatever over the next couple of days, as I've mentioned earlier, all of the Dragon Age stuff, and then we're going to be moving on to Metal Gear Solid, and there was one other thing as well which I can't remember what the hell it was, but going to be doing that. We've also got some reviews we're behind on, but I'm probably going to tackle most of the stuff in a vlog anyway. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon, take care, and bye for now.